Okay, as usual, let us take a moment to pay homage to the Perfect One, our Lord Buddha, by chanting the Namaskara 3 times. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay. How is everyone doing? I hope everyone's okay. Before we sort of kick things off officially, I would like to reassure everyone. I know the last few days have not been kind to Sri Lanka, and I'm guessing a lot of you are probably worried as to how we are. So we are okay, luckily. For those that aren't aware, Sri Lanka was battered by a cyclone, and over the last few days, so you were battered by a cyclone with heavy wind, strong winds, heavy rainfall, and lots of the country. Majority of the country was affected, unfortunately, with lots of floods and stuff. And I mean, even there were like lots of landslides, and entire villages were destroyed. But fortunately, we are okay. We had a lot of rainfall in the monastery, but other than that, we didn't really feel any effects of the cyclone, because someone told me today that we were in the eye of the storm, so that's why we weren't really affected. So I mean, we've heard that the country was, some people were out of without electricity for days, no phone signals. So people were really struggling, but we in the monastery and the 𝗬𝗏 village that is near next to the monastery, we didn't experience any of those things. We had electricity, we had lights, we didn't have any power cuts. We had um, for us life was normal. But yeah, so we'll talk about why some people were okay, some people weren't. We'll kind of try to match this with the Dhamma that we know. But in case you're concerned, we are okay. We are completely fine. Um, so yeah, it's unfortunate what's happened to the rest of the country. The country is recovering now, and I think the roads are being cleared, and more and more devotees are sort of coming into the monastery. I remember last Saturday there were only 100 devotees that came outside of the 𝗬𝗏 village. Normally we have like 2,000. So on that, so last Saturday, literally a few days ago, there was only 100 external visitors. So altogether, there was only about 300 or 400 devotees, which is still a lot, considering for a normal temple or something like that. But for us, that's a bad day at the office kind of thing. That's a slow day for us. So normally we have about 2,000. So yeah, that day was a lot less people. That's why if you listen to the sermon, Sinhalese sermon done by 𝗏𝗏𝗃 Thero, that sermon from straight off the bat, it's a very deep sermon. He goes very deep. I want to just start listening to it myself. So that's why, because it's the people who is the people, it's the 𝗘𝗏𝗃 and 𝗕𝗏𝗃s who come to the monastery every day, and who are very devoted, and who's been listening and practicing for years and years. Only they were present in the audience. That's why that sermon is a very deep sermon. So Do check it out when you have some time. So, but yeah, we are okay. We had no issues so far. So we have food, we have everything. So we are okay. So this is the thing. So a lot of people have been asking us, how come the monastery is okay? Monastery never seem to get affected by any of these things. Well, quite simply, the answer is it's it's merits. I mean, there's no other explanation for this. For this, merits runs the world. Everything happens based on people's merits and demerits. For example, if I were to ask you this question, I don't know if we discussed this last time, but people think money makes the world run. Money runs the world. This is what people genuinely believe, majority of the people. But if we were to ask ourselves, if we were to ask ourselves, okay, if money makes everything run, how much money did you pay to be born as a human? How much money did you pay for your human life to be born as a human? And on top of that, how much money did you pay to be born without any disabilities? Like, did you pay, I don't know, did you pay £1 million to be born as a human and then 10 grand on top to be born without any disabilities? No, right? So it clearly isn't money, isn't it? So then it must be merits, isn't it? I mean, there are no alternative explanations. If someone has one, I'm all ears. So it's because of merits. That's why we are born as a human. That's why we have everything. That's why if you have food on the table, that is why. That's because you've given before. That's why you have it now. If you didn't give before, you will never get it now. So merits, in other words, or you can think of it this way: being born as a human, having food on your table, being, I don't know, being smart, having good looks, all of these things, these are reactions, aren't they? For there to be a reaction, there has to be an action done prior to that reaction. Because it's not like reaction happens and then the action happens. That is related to that. No, the action happens first and then the reaction. Every action has an equal and an opposite reaction. Newton's third law. So, third law of motion. So, stuff we experience are reactions. So, for these reactions, there has to be an action. So, if you have food on your table, that's because you've done an action. You've done something similar, meaning you've given someone food before. That's why when Lord Buddha, one day, I think one day Lord Buddha he was going on 𝗕𝗶, which is he was on different streets, and he was begging for food. And he went to one of the houses and he didn't get anything. Normally, I mean, he's the Buddha. Wherever he goes, even if he were to go on 𝗕𝗶, even to hell, he would get something. I mean, he's that meritorious. Not that he would ever do that. I mean, it's not possible. But I'm just saying, even if you were to go to the most rural place, the most kind of roughest kind of place or the poorest area, and beg for food, he will get something because he's given. But there was one particular house, no matter how many times he went to that house, he never got offered anything. And he looked and he thought about why this is the case. And he realized that it's because I've never given anything to this. I think there was a lady who was living there, an old elderly lady. He realized that it's because he's never given her anything in his past life. He's never given her anything. That's why he's not getting anything from her. So this theory or this principle is the same for everyone. There are no exceptions. It doesn't matter if you're the Buddha or whoever you are. If you haven't given, you will not get. So the reason why you get food from like certain people, the reason why certain people will cook for you, and the reason why if you go to visit your friends, they will always give you something. The reason why they do that is because you've given to them before. It might be in a previous life, it could be now, but the point is that you would have given to them. Otherwise, you will not get anything from them. So its merits is a reason for everything. It's not money. You get money because of merits. Receiving money is an action. So it's a reaction. For that, there must have been an action. That's why if you were to ask someone this question, you have two options. One is to offer alms to the Mahasangha, or in other words, one is to do merits, offer alms to a beggar or to the Mahasangha or something like that, or you have the option to, let's say this is the weekend, you have the option to go and do some overtime, extra work. A lot of people, these are your two options, A and B, offer alms or do overtime at work. A lot of people would pick the second option. They would pick to go and do overtime, do some OT, but they don't know that they're getting to do OT, never mind OT, they have a job in the first place because of the merits they've done. So this is something that I know most of you get this and then you kind of believe this. So this is the truth. But today, what I want to do is I want to talk about why this is the case. Why we say what you give is what you get. Why is this true? Because this might be, I know maybe you yourselves might not need convincing of this, but it's good for us to know as to why this happens. And if you want to get someone else to do merits, you can use this as an explanation to prove to them logically. So there's a phenomenon in the world that for something to happen. So let's take the cyclone, for example. Cyclones, hurricanes, all these things. So the reason why a cyclone happens is when there is an area where there's low air pressure, when such area exists, that is an unbalance, isn't it? So area has low pressure, which means there is an area with high pressure. So when there is this difference, nature will balance it out. That's how nature works. We'll use different examples to understand this better. So the area with low pressure gets filled up by the area with high pressure. So bit of wind or whatever it is, it comes from the area with high pressure will fill up the area with low pressure. So this is what causes. So when this happens, that causes, because when this happens, there's like, this happens at high speeds and stuff like that. So when this happens, this creates cyclones, hurricanes. So, and so you can take another example. So if you were to look at water, the reason why, so in order for water to flow, it has to go from a high place to a low place, isn't it? Because high place has a higher potential energy, the low place has less. So this place, so the low place is in need of more water, is in need of water. This place has water in abundance. This has a lot more than it needs. So now, because here there's a need, there's a void, a deficiency, if you like. It will get filled from high place to low place. Water will travel to fill that up, and eventually, let's say the water that is here, it rises to this level. Now, because it's the same, it's equal. Now that will stop. So this is what we call, so meaning that, so wherever there's a void, wherever there's a need, when there's a need, something will happen. Or when there's a need, when there's a void, energy will be connected. This is what we call dukkha, characteristic of dukkha. So the world can be summarized into three characteristics. Or there are three characteristics that anything and everything in the world adheres or obeys to. These are anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So if you would look at the characteristic of dukkha, dukkha means the characteristic, it means if there's a void, energy gets collected to fill the void. So when you give something to someone, a void is created over here. So if I were to give something to, let's say if I were to offer a glass of water to another monk, I'm giving something which creates a void here, a gap in the market, if you like, a gap, a space, some kind of vacancy. Now, nature will fill that vacancy because there has to be a balance. So that is why, so you can apply this to your own lives. So why have we gathered here? Because there's a common need, a common desire, common necessity to understand the Dhamma, to liberate ourselves, to realize the truth. Because of this need, we are gathered. When the sermon ends, you all go back to your daily tasks. Let's say after this, some of you will have to go and maybe do the dishes or have dinner or make dinner or go to sleep or something like that. So we gathered for because of a necessity, and we disperse after this sermon. We disperse. Why? Because there's a necessity elsewhere. So necessity or a void, that is what collects energy. If you didn't have the necessity to listen to the Dhamma, you will not turn up to this talk, isn't it? I don't know if you are Arihant. If you are an Arihant, you will not come to this. Or if you are the opposite of an Arihant, then also you wouldn't come to this. I don't want to use the term, right? You can work it out, right? Who the opposite of an Arihant is, right? Then, if that's the case, you wouldn't also attend this talk. So, meaning that for either party, for both parties, sorry, there's no necessity to listen to the Dhamma. That's why they won't come to this sermon. So, this gathering happens because of a necessity. And after this sermon, we all disperse. Why? Because a necessity is elsewhere. I would go to sleep and you will do something. Why? Because of a necessity. I would go to sleep. Why? Is because it's 1 in the morning. There's 𝗁ociyiye tomorrow. So I have to do announcing, so I have to get some sleep. Otherwise, I'm gonna fall asleep during 𝗁ociyiye. Right? So now these are the necessities. Necessity makes the world run in a way. You could say, because merits is essentially creates this necessity. Merits or hopes, these creates this necessity, and this necessity collects energy that is relevant to that necessity. So now we have this. Last weekend we were planning on having this event where we were going to launch 25 YouTube channels. 25 channels with different. So these were channels with preaching the Dhamma in different languages. Some of you might have heard about this. So unfortunately, it didn't happen because of the state of affairs. Because the country was in faced a pandemic. I mean, it was the worst floods in over 100 years apparently. So because of that, we had to postpone it. So I think it will happen sometime next month. So 25 languages, 25 different YouTube channels in 25 different languages, preaching the Dhamma, spreading the Dhamma. So when we were doing some mate work the other day, one of the monks asked me, why are we doing this? Because there are certain languages where we only have 1 or 2 speakers, and there are some languages where we don't even have even one person who is a fluent speaker. We have few who are okay, but not fluent. So he asked me this question. He asked me, why do you think Guru Thero and why do you think we are planning on doing something like this? So, I mean, initially, I haven't really thought about this. And when he asked me the question, I thought for a few seconds and, oh, literally not I thought, the thought came to me and I was like, so now think about it. Let's take a random, let's take one of these languages. So let's take Portuguese, for example. Okay. So we don't have a native Portuguese speaker. We have a couple of monks who are studying it. They have some sort of grasp of the language, but not fluent. So now let's say someone who can, let's say, who's fluent in Portuguese, they might hear some of this Dhamma. Let's say they can speak a bit of English, or let's say, okay, they watched our Portuguese channel and they understood this. And let's say they came to the monastery. Somehow they came across our sermons, and they decided to come to the monastery because they've heard that, okay, so there's a Portuguese channel, so which means that there are people who can speak my language. So if there are people who can speak me, that means they will be able to understand me. There are people that I can get on with and stuff. So they will feel like, okay, it's a place that I belong. So because we have that YouTube channel, a native Portuguese speaker might feel comfortable in coming to the monastery. So let's say now they came to the monastery and they kind of immerse themselves in the Dhamma and they understand the Dhamma more and more and more. And when they understand the Dhamma, they wouldn't care whether there are Portuguese speakers or not. They will just, it's fine because they understand the Dhamma. And now we can say, okay, now we actually have someone who is actually properly and who's fluent in Portuguese. So we would never get that person if we haven't created the YouTube channel. Meaning that when if we want people from all around the world, what we need to do is to create a necessity. Like in Sinhala, we say 𝗚𝗏𝗿𝗄𝗏, right? We have to create that. So because we've created that through launching these channels, now that's why that person came in the first place. If we didn't have the YouTube channel, he would or she would have never got to see it or hear it, and they would never come to the monastery in the first place. So because we've created that necessity, because we've created that void, in other words, essentially, we've created like a black hole, and black hole sucks everything in that's around it. So that's what we've done. So that brought that person. Now that person, they will do some videos and they will, word of mouth, will spread, and they will bring in their mates, and through them their mates, and then stuff like that. So this is how it works. Necessity brings things together. So now the reason why some people, so does that make sense to you? So necessity is what drives everything. That's why you can so because you wanted to listen to the Dhamma, that's why you maybe you had some other plans, so you probably shifted them around, and you made all the necessary efforts to come here. The reason why all of that happened is because of a necessity. Because attending this talk was at the top of your priorities at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, or today. So because this was the highest priority, everything that is needed to make this happen happened. Didn't it? So this is how the world works. That's why if you really want to achieve something, you will. You did. Stuff that you really wanted to get done in life, you achieved it. So that's why Nibbana was probably not the top of our lists. That's why we are still in samsara. For us, Nibbana was number one. It was some other stuff. That's why we're still here. So now we've changed that a little bit. So now that's why now our life has become very Nibbana centric, Nibbana oriented, or our salvation oriented. Now that's why a lot of people here. You've been coming to these sermons since we've started nearly a year ago. You've been coming to these sermons every week, and you've dedicated your entire lives to the sasana because in some of your cases your family's in the monastery. So now you have lots of free time and lots of lots of energy that would otherwise be spent to cater for your family. Now you have all of that energy in you and time. So now everything is going towards sasana, towards the dispensation of Buddhism. So now your necessities have changed. Now everything that is relevant to the latest necessity happens. And here's the thing though. When, let's say, someone attains Nibbana, what happens is that necessity goes away now. So let's say someone attains Nibbana while listening to this sermon, or let's say energy, it collects when there's a void, when there's a need, and so energy gets collected, not because energy wants to be collected to stay together. Energy doesn't want to do anything. The void drags the energy together. And when there's no void, energy won't go back to, it doesn't want to disperse either. Energy doesn't want to do anything. It's neutral. That's why we call, I think, that's why we call Nibbana as 𝗕𝗄𝗂𝗍𝗐. Nicca means there is no agenda. There's no preference anymore. Sukha means it's not a manifestation anymore. It's just dispersed. And Atta means it's neutral. There's no need to put any effort. Like it's not putting any effort or energy. It's just there, still neutral. Still might be the wrong word, but like neutral. You could say still as well. So it's not like energy has an agenda. So that's why when you attend Nibbana, that's why it's a state of it's a constant state. It's not something that will change because there's no movement. It's like, so another example is take a bird, for example. When that bird is in flight, like that. It's flapping its wings. It's putting a lot of energy and effort to try to keep it, try to maintain flight, isn't it? Try to keep it flying. So when does a bird needs to stop? When does a bird can stop flapping its wings? When can a bird rest? A bird can rest. So, typically, as we were discussing, it has to spend a lot of energy trying to keep itself in the air, isn't it? So when does a bird need to rest? When does it not need to do any of that stuff, flap its wings and stuff like that? When can it rest? When it's on a branch, isn't it? Sinhalese word for branch is atta, isn't it? When it's on a branch, it can rest. So nibbana is atta, meaning it's neutral. No need to put any effort. So it's that type of state. So since we're talking about the characteristic of dukkha, so that's the thing. So energy doesn't want to disperse. It doesn't really want to do anything. The reason why it gets dispersed is because imagine there's energy in between, and in between maybe, let's say, a few black holes, for example. So now energy gets pulled in all sorts of directions based on the strength of the black holes. So it's kind of like that. We are like the energy, and our needs are like these black holes that's dragging us into all directions. Okay, so the reason why we say what you give is what you get is because of this. When you give, you're creating a necessity, you're creating a void over here, and nature has to balance things out. That's how nature works. So now that void will be filled. That's why when you give something, you always end up getting it. So it's all very logical how everything works. So that's why we say to do merits. Because when you do merits, the more merits you do, the larger the void becomes, the larger the necessity becomes, and it's a constant reminder, it's a constant trigger. You're triggering the mind to think and to think along these lines. It's like constant reminder that okay, so this is what I need to do. That's why we always say when you do a merit, focus it towards nibbana, focus it towards your salvation. Think, I will understand the truth. Make a determination when you do merits. Why? Because now, if you just do merits willy-nilly, without any proper intention and proper, if you're not focusing it on something, then the necessity you're creating in the mind, I think there's no necessity now. Now it's just like, it's like you're firing it everywhere. You're not aiming it at a particular target. So when we say avilata nibbana, what you're doing is you're creating that necessity in the mind. So we are using these actions, merits, essentially these actions, we're using these actions to create that necessity in the mind, create that void in the mind. That necessity will drive you towards that goal. So that's why a lot of people ask us, I'm sure you've asked us this at certain points, you asked that, I mean, we asked this from senior monks as well, how do we stay focused? How do we be mindful all the time? How do we bring our knowledge into awareness? How can we maintain, how can we do vidarshana? So this is something that a lot of people have. It's a common question. So to switch on, we need triggers. That's why we say, if you constantly use a laptop, if you're working on a laptop, write on your laptop or put a sticker on it that says that will trigger you to think to trigger you to contemplate the Dhamma, or have something on the car, or around the way, around your house, for example, or you can set reminders on your phone. So because that's why we say do meditation. So when you do these things, these will trigger the mind into contemplating. It will switch the contemplation mode on. And that's why back in the days, or not back in the days, but even now, that's why temples are built on high ground. Temples are typically built on top of mountains and these, unreachable places, really, physically speaking, high places, high ground. And the pagoda or chaitya is the biggest thing that's there, or the most prominent, or the statue of the Buddha. These tend to be really big. So the reason why, and then if you look at churches, like if you would look at some of the buildings in the Vatican, or if you look at a mosque, they have a pagoda-looking shape at the top. They have like a dome, and then like a line sticking up. So these these are, I don't know if you've noticed that these are very similar shapes. So these are basically chaityas, pagodas. So where did this idea come from? One could wonder, isn't it? So basically, the chaitya represents someone's journey towards nibbana, because at the base it's very wide. It's a wide rectangular base, and then you have the semicircle, that dome, and then you have two smaller squares. So basically, as you go towards the top, as you move towards the top, it gets skinnier and skinnier and skinnier, and eventually, when you are at the top, at the peak, above it is empty skies, meaning that there's nothing or no defilements. You are cleansed, pure, zero defilements. So that is the pagoda represents someone's journey towards nibbana, and it's usually at a very high ground in that village or in that town. It's the tallest thing. Why? Because everyone can see it, and when people see it, that triggers them. By that I mean that will switch contemplation mode on. That's why that's why every town, every little village has a temple. That's why in the West, that's why there are churches everywhere, isn't it? Because a church has the cross, isn't it? That is their symbol. So what does the cross represent? So in the Bible it says, if you read between the lines, if you analyze it, cross means, so cross is like that, isn't it? Okay? So it means no I, no self. So if you were to write I, like the capital I, it's simply a straight line, isn't it? Yeah. So no I. That's why there's a cross that goes across it. So that's what that symbol means. So when it's on top of the church, where everyone can see, that should get people to think, to contemplate. So these are triggers that pretty much every religion has, because they're all talking about the same thing, aren't they? That's why it's all interlinked. It's the same philosophy that's been introduced to different cultures and societies, and it took a shape that they understand. Though it appears different on the surface, but at the bottom and then deep down, it's the same thing. There's no difference. So that is why. So now, because we know how the world works, dukkha, right? necessity brings things together. Now that's why we say, because we know that everything we experience, I mean, the Buddha described two types of worlds: the world of energy, or the world of dhatu, or the four great elements, satara dhatu. There is that world, and that is the real world, if you like. And there's also another world, which is the virtual reality. The world of energy is a reality, and this other world is a virtual world, the world where colors exist, world with the colorful world, the world with noise, world with sound, the world with tastes and tactile sensations. So this world, that world is something that's created in the mind. In other words, that's a fake world. That's not the actual world. So that world, is fictional. The world of energy, the world with energy, that world is the real world. So now, when we, so meaning that everything we see, we feel, we hear, that is our mind. So everything you see is an extension of your mind. But now, when we perform a merit, when we say to focus it towards Nibbana, essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to motivate ourselves. It's self-motivation. Because if you are alone in your world, though we feel like we are living with the family, though we feel like we have, I don't know, 600 friends on Facebook and stuff like that, technically speaking, we are by ourselves. We are alone, always was and always will be. So now we are trying to do something by ourselves. So now we're trying to do something basically. So for us to do something, we need some kind of motivation, isn't it? Without motivation, without any inspiration, without a kick up the backside, nothing will get done. That's why when you were younger, your parents will really probably pushed you to study, isn't it? For a lot of us, this was the case. Our parents pushed us because of that. That's why we ended up studying, right? Because none of us actually wanted to study, but because we got the push, we ended up doing it because we ended up, because of that push and various other courses, we ended up motivating ourselves. We developed the desire from within, and we got that done. We did this revision and passed the exams and etc. So because we are living in this world by ourselves, what we need to do is we need to create that motivation from within. So that's why we say when we do merits, that's why we say to focus it towards Nibbana, because then you're creating that need, that necessity, and essentially you're kind of motivating yourself. So that's why. And so really and truly, all of these things that we're doing is to motivate ourselves. Because if we are not motivated, we will not attain Nibbana. So doing merits and all of these things, rituals and listening to sermons, these are simply there to motivate yourself. Motivation or desire or expectation, that creates a necessity, and that will collect the energy that is relevant, and that will lead us to the destination. And when you get to the destination, then there's no more need. That goes away. Now that's it. Now you don't need to do anything. As in, now you don't need to attain Nibbana, because you already got that. You already achieved. It's like merits is like the fuel for the journey, but the driver has to drive it, take the vehicle to the destination. Nibbana is the destination. Merits is the fuel. So, but you, the driver, has to make sure. So the necessity is the driver. Necessity will take you to the. If the necessity is right, it will take you to the right destination. And when you get to the destination, you don't need the fuel anymore. You don't need fuel. So that's why someone who's enlightened, that's why they can't do merits or demerits, because that concept doesn't apply to them anymore. So once you reach your destination, you don't need fuel. So that is the thing. That's why they say Nibbana is Atta. Nature Sukha Atta. Because there's no more necessity, there's no more necessity. There are no more voids in your life. So that's the thing. So reason why some people were affected. So you could also say, if the Dhamma is rising, then it has to be balanced. There needs to be a balance. So that's why for the Dhamma to rise, there has to be a great kind of catastrophe, if this is meant to happen. Because the thing is this, the world, so take a mind, okay, so, let me ask you this question. Do you want to die or do you want to keep on living? You want to die or do you want to keep on living? You want to live, isn't it? You want to keep on living. So, meaning that a mind with ignorance wants to keep on going, wants some kind of existence. It doesn't want to not exist. It wants to keep on living. It wants to keep on going. So now what happens is that if everybody was to become very selfish, self-centered, now that will create a lot of arguments, a lot of fights and stuff. If everyone ends up fighting each other, then can the world survive? Can civilization keep going? No. So if everyone turns, so this is the way society is going now, isn't it? Everyone's is very selfish and stuff like that. And because of this, the world can't, if we were to carry on in this manner, the world can't survive. So now nature is basically all of our consciousness. Nature is basically all of our thoughts. So it's like a collection of all of our thoughts, because when we think, it manipulates, so it can change. When we think of something, it changes the energy that's around us. So now nature is basically all of our thoughts. And because most people have ignorance or the wrong idea that existence, so they want to experience a separation, something different, a difference. So because of this idea drives everything. So if a lot of people if a lot of minds bear this idea, then now the overall effect or the resultant effect is to survive, is to keep on going, is to keep on going to experience a difference that we are all after. So now our minds collectively created a universe, nature, where it wants to survive. Now, if there's any threat to survival, to keep on existing, nature will do something to prevent it. If nature will remove any obstacles. Now, like I was saying, if everyone were to become selfish and if they were to fight each other and stuff like that, now the world can't survive. So now nature will bring in a cure. Nature will bring in, I don't know, dictators, these, like, nature will bring in people like Hitler, people like Prabhakaran. The nature will bring these kind of people, Genghis Khans, to get rid of some of that, so that to strike some kind of balance. And from time to time, it will bring a Buddha to balance things out. But you can't have a Buddha all the time, because then then that becomes a threat to existence as well. Because if everyone were to Nibbana, then there's no more world again. So you can't have either one. I mean, you need them from time to time. So that is why everything is catered towards survival. That's why for now, for, as the prophecy says, for the next 600 years, the sasana, dispensation of the Buddha, the Dhamma will spread. We are at the start of it, because that's what the world needs right now. In order for the world to survive, it needs a Dhamma. This needs to spread. So, so, so this is the thing. So now what happens is that when people, oh, where I was going with this is that now, because world's moving towards a state where survival is being threatened, there's a thing called the doomsday clock, where scientists basically they analyze what's going on in the world. So like AI, wars between different countries, political situations, and foreign relations between different countries. So group of scientists, they take all of these things into consideration, and they make a fairly accurate a guess as to how close we are to the end, to the extinction of mankind or humankind. So they say we are 30 seconds away from extinction, meaning that by 30 seconds, it means we are very close, because if one country ends up launching a nuke, other country will launch two more, and then allies will jump in, and then everyone's gonna nuke each other, and that will be the end of civilization. So meaning that we are very close to the end. The end is near if things were to continue. So because everyone wants to survive, now nature will introduce something to make sure survival happens. So that's why they say by 2030, 2035, there's going to be a great disaster that's gonna that will get rid of some of the bad. It will be the start, and then the goodwill has to prevail to balance the situation. So that's why, if you notice, now satellite technology has become a big deal now, isn't it? So like even in Sri Lanka, I mean, I'm not trying to have a go at anyone or anything like that. So I'm going to use this name just to explain the point. Okay, so I'm not saying they're right or wrong. So you probably all heard of Starlink. Yeah, so Starlink is available in Sri Lanka now. Actually, we got one in the monastery. So internet speeds are crazy high now. So today the stream was stable, right? It didn't drop or anything like that. So yeah, so we have a Starlink connection now. So it's about, I think, 70 megabits per second or something like that. It's very fast. So now in Australia, Telstra is like, I don't know. So they're the monopoly holders when it comes to internet service providers. They formed a partnership with Starlink. So now what's happening is that a lot of people are switching to Starlink. Why? Because it's faster, it requires a lot less, hassle. You don't need, I don't know, the deep sea internet cables, and you know what I mean. It doesn't need a lot of the physical setup, and you have connection from anywhere in the world. So now people are switching towards the satellite technology, but now the danger is that, so what they predict is that by 2030 there's going to be a massive solar eruption, which is going to send a solar flare. A solar flare is basically like an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, which is going to knock out all the satellites, and it's going to knock all the communications out as well. So now, when that happens, people, because I mean, imagine not having social media for one day, right? People will go nuts. It'll be very uneasy and stuff like that. But let's say there was no social media for a week, a month, a year, right? The loss of life is unthinkable, isn't it? So if something like this happened in the 1800s, they're saying something like this is about to happen. So when this happens, and when communications aren't working, when people don't know what's happening in the town next to them, now people will go mad, and some people will end up, you know, fighting each other and killing each other, and some of the population will be removed. They'll be gone. And the people who are left, the ones who are surviving, now they will turn for answers. Because now when the mind is under pressure, there's TikTok, there's Insta, there's Netflix and stuff like that to relieve the pressure. But when those things are gone, there's nothing for them to do now. There's no way to relieve the pressure. Now they will turn towards something. Now people will start turning religion. Because when people get scared, when they face a life-threatening situation, that's when they turn towards religion, isn't it? When you have an exam, or if you're facing a serious health condition, or if you have a job interview or something like that, that's when you go to the temple and do a Bodhi puja or something like that. That's when you offer alms or do something like that. So in our hour of need, people tend to turn to religion. So something like this is going to happen. It has to happen for the world to survive. So that's the thing. So you don't need to take these things too seriously, but what we need to do is to do merits, create the necessity in the mind, like tell the mind that, keep telling the mind that this is what you need to do, because we only realize how important this is when we know. And imagine you were diagnosed with a disease that is basically, I don't know, let's say a cancer, for example. Touch wood, I hope none of you ever will. But let's say you were, and doctor says you only have, I don't know, 6 months left to live. Now you would put everything to a side, and you would try to attain Nibbana. That's why the Buddha said, you've got to have a desire. You could have a wanting. Like imagine your entire body's on fire. They said, like imagine you're on fire, and I mean, your first priority is to put the fire out, to extinguish the fire. You're not gonna say, oh, let me get promoted, I don't know, let me get married, let me have a couple of kids, and then let me put the fire out. You're not gonna say that. I mean, let me finish this series on Netflix, and then let me put the fire out. No, you would putting the fire out will be the first and foremost thing that you would do. So you got to have that type of attitude when it comes to attaining Nibbana. If you don't have that kind of attitude, then it's not the priority. Then that means, you know, basically, you will have to endure mental suffering for longer. So that's the thing. So I know you are all very busy. You have, stuff that you have to do, commitments and responsibilities, etc. But whenever you have some free time, or try to, you know, have a timetable or something. Have a timetable and make sure you dedicate some time, find some time somehow, move things around, and find at least, I don't know, 15 minutes, half an hour every day to contemplate this stuff. Think about this Dhamma, because all of you know enough Dhamma already, probably more than even me. So what you need to do now is to practice this. That is the key. So some of you are very blessed to have everyone in your family following this. So your house can be a temple, can be a monastery, and create that environment, that atmosphere for yourselves, and help each other, and try to understand this. Because what we need to do is we need to to be to bring this to awareness. You have to understand this theory fully. You have to have a very good understanding, very solid understanding of the theory. So use an example. That's why, if you can spend half an hour at least, sit down somewhere and use a simple example, a flame, or I use purple. So like you have water and you mix red and blue, and you mix these three and you see purple, but there's no purple is just an effect. Purple is only in your mind. Purple is basically, purple doesn't exist really, but it's not purple. It's not done. It's work in progress. It's purpling, isn't it? What's really there are the causes. So obviously causes themselves are effects, but you don't need to go delve too deep into that. Just try to understand the concept at a easy point. Yeah, at a high level. You don't need to break it down into. You don't have to go down or to the pure octet Shuddhashtaka. You don't need to go down to that level. So use an example and master that example. Try to understand, to kind of like recall Anicca Dukkha Anatta using that example, and through that, with that lens, now with that understanding, now look at the world. Now look at every thought that's coming to your mind and apply this theory. Every thought is like purple. It's not coming to you. It's just a thought. It's manifesting, because thoughts don't belong to anyone. Because if thoughts belongs to someone, then nobody else will be able to have that thought. Because when you're at a meeting, you'd have had oftentimes you'd have had multiple people coming up with the same idea. If ideas belong to you, then you should be the only person who comes up with that particular idea. Nobody else should be able to come up with that idea. So if other people are coming up with that idea, that means that idea isn't coming to anyone. Idea comes into being, or to replicate the same idea, all you have to do is replicate the causes. If the same causes come together in different minds, same idea will come out. So this is bringing the philosophy into, so to kind of like remind yourself, prove this to yourself, and now with that, so use that as a portal to enter the current situation. And now you will be able to kind of process everything, see exactly what's going on, and practice actual mindfulness. So that is the aim. Seed in meditation, that is the practice. And this, what's happening each and every moment, that is the game. Now you're playing the game. Now you're in the game. Now you're in the match. Practice is all, but you have to practice in order to face this successfully. Without practice, we're in trouble. So that's why. So like we say, find, if you are unsure about the Dhamma, if there are bits that you need to clarify, you can book an online discussion with one of us, and we can help you sort of clear those bits out. or you can find a clip online where Guru Thero talks about the doctrine. Find a 15-20 minute clip, and listen to that clip every day, and spend, let's say you spend 15 minutes listening to the clip, spend another 15 minutes thinking about what's being said, and to kind of process it. And this is something that you can practice every day. If you can do that, give yourself that half an hour, then you will see a lot of progress. And then, because the more you practice, easier it becomes. So it will come to a point where, like Guru Thero tells us, that he can do pretty much any task and be aware. He has that samadhi. He has that he is aware of what's actually going on. That is because of his practice. And there are no shortcuts. I mean, Guru Thero is also a mind, just like we are. So there's no difference between, it's not like it's something completely different. It's not like it's an alien, right? It's a mind. The reason why it's become so good at this is because it's that mind has practiced. The reason why we struggle is because we haven't practiced as much. That's the only difference. So make sure you practice. If you won't, again, if attaining Nibbana is at the top of your priority list of priorities, then give yourself at least that half an hour. I'm sure you can do something to find half an hour. No matter how busy you are, I'm sure you should be able to, find a half an hour window every day. So practice these things, because practice is what we need. That's why every day we go to the Valley. We go and we have to stay in one place and practice seated meditation. Sit down in one place. You can't move too much unless your legs are in pain. Then you can move a little bit, but stay in one place. Close your eyes and think. Mind hates it. Mind hates doing the same thing over and over again, because why? The mind is programmed to experience a difference. Because mind is taught that there's a difference out there. So that's why mind is looking for. That's why when you're walking on the street, that's why our head's turning, 180 degrees. That's why we're checking out different things. Why? Because we're searching for that difference. So because the mind is programmed to think that way, that's why it's very difficult to stay and concentrate on one particular thing. That's why when we meditate, we tend to, fall asleep. That's why mind hates meditation. That's why we tend to fall asleep and stuff like that when we meditate, because it's not getting to experience a difference. I mean, there's no difference, to be honest, but the mind thinks there's a difference. But so to come out of that, you have to practice. So initially, you might, out of 15 minutes, you might be asleep 14.5 minutes, but at least you were awake for 30 seconds and you were contemplating for 30 seconds. That's still a result. That is 30 seconds more than you've done before. So gradually it'll increase. So even us, when I meditate for half an hour, for 2 hours, my mind is, it goes all over the shop. And out of the 2 hours, I was probably only really contemplating for maybe half an hour. It used to be a lot worse, but now, because we are practicing every day, it's improving. So that's how it is. This is very much a marathon. So don't give up. Don't expect instant results. So keep going bit by bit by bit. It might take you a year, 2 years, especially given the environment that you're in. It's going to be even more difficult, but keep trying, because this is the only way out. As we all know, there's no other way out. So, I mean, so one of the Anagarikas who are here, he's Kenyan. His grandfather passed away recently, and he was his favorite nephew. Therefore, all of his property and all of his belongings word transport to him. Now the issue is, now he has to fly back to Kenya to sort all of it out. And he was speaking to one of our monks and he was crying. He was saying, I don't want to go. I know this is the truth. I know this is the only way out. I want to come back. But when you go out there, there's no guarantee, right? Because you leave, because he lives here with a lot of merits. And when you go out there, you're essentially going into the Mara's lap, Mara's world. Mara will do everything to keep you trapped in his world. So he knows full well the dangers of going out, but he says he's determined to finish everything and then come back. But he was crying, he was in tears. And this is not someone who's from a Buddhist background. He's not Sri Lankan, he's not Buddhist. He's from Kenya. No ounce of Buddhism over there, really. But even he feels the gravity of this. Even he feels that this is the truth, that this is the only way out. So, I mean, so if they feel that, then say no more, right? So that's the thing. So give yourself this chance, self the chance, and try to come out of this trap. Okay, I'm happy to conclude. So thank you all for joining. So next week session will be done by Mahinda. He was meant to do it today, but he sent me a message a couple of hours ago when I was doing a sermon in our Noble Friends, which used to be a rehabilitation center or rehabilitation center. He said he hasn't slept in 2 days. So because they're in Sydney right now, and they're 10 hours ahead of you, so it's or 11 hours ahead of you, so it's 12, so 7 over there in the UK. It's like 6 in the morning over there. So he said he hasn't slept in 2 days. So he told me to do it today. So, but next week he said he promised he will do it. So keep doing merits. So he will come next week. If you don't do merits, then you'll get me. I'm sorry, it's not my fault. You could blame yourselves for this, right? Okay. So yeah. So he will see you next week. And I will see you in 2 weeks' time. So take good care of yourselves. Take into consideration what we've discussed, and yeah, keep practicing. By the power of all the merits you've accumulated throughout this entirety of samsara, may you all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana in this very life. And if there are any obstacles in your way of attaining Nibbana, may all those obstacles be removed. 𝗕𝗏.